Welcome to the Jets UK Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Matthew Merrett. Matt, how are you doing today?
All good. It's good to be back after missing the two episodes around Buffalo. Unfortunately, I was away up in Liverpool on a stag do, so I managed to catch the game on my return, but I wasn't quite fit enough, shall we say, to jump on the podcast after a big weekend. Great city though, Liverpool. So shout out to any of our listeners who are up in that part of the world. But yeah, good to be back. I'm looking forward to this game. It's kind of reached the point in the season, particularly for Jets, where I have kind of started amping up my draft research, shall we say, and kind of taking a look at some of the prospects who are going to be on our radar coming out, and started flying those around our WhatsApp group. But here today with a focus on what is a winnable game against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, yeah, definitely draft talk is coming through. We're assimilating that from Jets Twitter, all the posts, all the stuff that's got all the discussion in the Discord about who we should take at each position. It's filtering through all that information, even without even me doing any research. I'm getting all that information just handed to me through Jets Twitter before I even dive into it myself. So, it is unfortunately that time of the year where we're doing that. We're in another year of that position, but yeah, we're in the game. Let's see how we can wrap up the season, and we start with this game in Miami. So against Miami, a home game. And yeah, I think they're coming off 2 wins, a really good win last Thursday night against Baltimore. But yeah, I think still beatable if we play a good game. I don't see why we can't win this game. They've got good players, but so have we. And I think we need to show up, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. So so we're going to be doing our usual preview to finish off the show. We'll also be speaking to Lee from Dolphins UK, and I had a good chat with him about his team. It was a really good chat. Get to know a division rival, but yeah, he's a really, really good guy. Really good chat. But before that, we'll get into a little bit of news. Okay, so the main news for this week is really just the announcement that Joe Flacco will be starting as QB, with Zach Wilson still not ready to return, and him being favoured over Mike White, who obviously had his chance to impress against Buffalo was his last start for now, and they decided to go with Flacco. I guess my guess is that they think that gives them the best chance to win. But there's all these different narratives. How are you feeling about the decision, Matt?
To be honest, the decision between Joe Flacco and Mike White didn't really fail to move the needle either way for me. It just kind of felt a bit There was kind of 2 groups, wasn't there, that kind of reacted to it. There's one group of people, and any time the Jets do anything which isn't positive, they just get on the back, and I think it comes out of the 10 years of bad decisions, poor roster management. So any opportunity to kind of slam on the Jets and kind of punk up them, they take and they enjoy. And I think there were a lot of people who kind of got excited by the Mike White game. And then I think that's the second group of people, which is kind of the reaction, is kind of the more pragmatic view, which is, I think Joe Flacco is kind of a more experienced quarterback. He can kind of manage the game. And I think, for me, Mike White almost always caught lightning in a bottle for that one Cincinnati game. And I don't think it was ever really sustainable or going to be long-lasting. Otherwise, we would have seen it in pre-season when he's had snaps, or in training camp he would have been talked about. It just kind of never really felt like anything that was going to last. So for this game against Miami, we can come on to the matchup when we kind of get into our game breakdown. I think it makes total sense to go with Joe Flacco. It doesn't really register, doesn't really move it one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a shame that we're on our 4th quarterback of the season. I think no one quite saw the year panning out like this with Zach's injury. But that's the bottom line. This year should be all about Zach, and if he's not quite 100% and ready to come back, however disappointing that is, I think we'll just move on, and then hopefully he'll be back for the Houston game.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we'll touch upon their defense, in our preview, but just touching upon it, they've got they're the highest hit rate. They've got the highest QB hits in the whole league, and if you don't feel comfortable with your QB of the future, of the present, obviously your shining present, he's the guy that you want to play right now, but he's the guy for the future. And if he's not ready, 100%, and you've got this team coming in who love to blitz and get lots of licks, and and our line is not something. It's not some sort of, they'll hold up in some ways, but they'll let through in others. And this team, you can see how we failed to pick up blitzes, we failed to pick up stunts, all that stuff. It's been a season long issue. You can imagine that someone with Joe Flacco, this also comes into the Flacco versus White decision, that Flacco will be able to see things a bit better because of his experience. He'll be able to pick up, where obviously if they're sending blitzes, there's going to be holes in the back end that he can exploit. And I think he'll be able to see it more than any of the other two younger guys. And obviously with Zach, you don't put him out there for this game if he's not 100%. So I think it's the right decision. I'm not, I don't think Flacco inspires a lot of goodwill towards the way he speaks. He speaks very matter of fact in his press conferences, and it's very much like he's not the friendliest guy. He doesn't seem. He's not like. I don't think he's the most. I don't know. He says it's just my job. It's like he treats it much more like it's just a job. Like he's not. That he has got that fire, that passion that you would want to see. But I think he's a professional, and he's gonna do what he has to do. He's being paid to do and what he's asked to do, and that will be getting the ball into our playmakers' hands, whoever we're very excited about, and hopefully they will be able to give us the excitement on Sunday. That's what I'm looking forward to. So if it was Mike White or Joe Flacco, I wouldn't really be bothered about that. I would be more, because really it was all about what Mike White did is enable our young playmakers to come to life, which is where we want it, right? Zach hopefully will be able to implement that, also do his own bit of magic as well, and bring it all together. But yeah, Flacco hopefully can do a decent job there, and I'm not too fussed about it. But I do understand it's a bit frustrating because you want to go with, you say you want, let's give the young guy another guy. We could obviously maybe boost his draft, his value in a potential trade. It could go either way. You could also put another bad game of tape out there with Mike White, because right now all you've got is a bad game against the number one D that year. If people are looking back at this season,
Yeah,
so
I think it's probably exemplified just by the fact that it's been so long as the Jets we've had that level of quarterback play, and people rallied behind Mike White. It was a nice story. They kind of got excited by it. It was an upset win, and I think that made a difference to people. But I think ultimately it's probably going to be a footnote in hopefully what is Zach Wilson's rookie season.
yeah, and that's where the focus is, and I think it's a good shot that he'll be back for the Houston game next week, traveling down to Houston and obviously against a very struggling team there, and hopefully a good game for Zach to get back in and maybe pick up another win, his personal second win of the season. That's the hope. So yeah, we rock on to Sunday with Joe Flacco, and hopefully our young team around him, highlight, delights us, and we get to enjoy that and rave about that coming off the win on Sunday. So we'll see how that is. But for that, we'll wrap it up. In the news, pretty brief, but we'll head over to our interview with Lee from Dolphins. Okay, so I'm joined by Lee from the Dolphins UK, also 5 Yard Lee on Twitter. Lee, thanks for joining us on the pod.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to talk football with anyone.
Yeah, it's great to dive in, and speak to the Dolphins fans. We spoke a little bit to Raj, a friend of yours from the Dolphins community, preseason, in our kind of preseason roundtable. But it's good to kind of get one of the guys from the kind of a similar podcast to our one in the UK. So it's always good to touch base. Before we jump into any of the questions about this season or about this game, what's your journey to your team and how you became a Dolphins fan?
So I stumbled across the NFL a little bit by accident when babysitting my brothers as a kid. In school, I'd kind of been told that American football's just rugby with pads on, and that it's kind of a bit rubbish.
That's always what we
So-
heard. We always heard that
exactly.
Yeah.
So I saw it on TV one night and flicked it on and thought, right, I'm gonna let's find out what this really is. And it happened to be the Super Bowl, and it was Tampa Bay and Oakland. Tampa Bay won easy. It was exciting. There was a lot going on. Anyway, so after some time of trying to find more games to watch, and then with no idea that that's the Super Bowl and the end of the season, eventually I managed to see some kind of games and highlights the following year on kind of online, and picking up the first was it called First Down, the newspaper back in the day. It was an American football newspaper over here, and so I picked that up. And I said to my mum, who was a travel agent, or is a travel agent, look, I really want to go and see this live. She's like, who do you want to go and see play? And I was like, I don't care, just whatever's the easiest to get me to. I'm good. We'll go for it. So she said, okay, I can get you to Orlando and you can go and see Tampa play. I was like, great. Nice and easy. And 2 days before I was due to fly out, I got a phone call from her saying, look, this flight looks like a bit of a mess. It's really full, but I can get on a flight to Miami. I was like, okay. So about 3 days later, I was in Miami and heading to Dolphins-Falcons game, and been hooked ever since. I mean,
you almost became a Bucks fan then. You
exactly.
You could have been on the back of a Super Bowl win recently.
Yeah. But I remember walking out and seeing the field in, what was Dolphin Stadium at the time, and just, man, been hooked ever since. It's just, yeah.
That's cool. That's a nice story. It's like I said, it's always a nice story in terms of how people fight. It can be sometimes it's like Madden with their dads, or things. There's always interesting ways, but it's always cool because we don't have that way of like our dads passing it down necessarily. I mean, there's a few people that will happen. I think that's going to happen after our generation, right? So, passing it down to our offspring. But it's kind of it's always a fun story to kind of find people how they found their team, from across the pond or around the world. So it's really interesting. This season, not going great for you guys compared to expectations. I think everyone, even us Jets fans, acknowledged you guys were a decent team on paper. It looked like you were kind of progressing nicely. What's happened from those expectations to the first half of the season?
I think it's been a little bit of a mixture of things. I think expectations are probably maybe a bit higher than they should have been. It's still a team that is being built. It's a lot better kind of on paper, but once you start looking at the depth of this team, it becomes a little bit more tricky. I think that's just that's what happens when you empty the cupboards completely, like we did, 2-3 years ago now. You've got to build completely from scratch. And I think, we look good. You come off 10 wins last year where everything kind of went pretty well. And you go, automatically, you must win more games because you'll improve. Well, you get a few injuries and all of a sudden things don't look the same. And I think things spiral out of control kind of quickly. I'm not as worried about it as the media would have you believe, and a lot of Dolphins that have been reacting, Dolphins fans, a lot of them are one-score games. We were in them whilst playing absolutely awful football. I mean, there were some weeks there that have been really bad. And I think probably the most egregious thing that as a franchise we've probably done is almost repeat the same mistakes as we did with Ryan Tannehill by essentially having me and you play O-line. And getting our quarterback killed. It's difficult to judge a guy, when he's spending most of the time on his butt. The hit that when Tua got hurt week 2 against the Bills, Ed Oliver came wide open. No one even got in his way. A traffic cone would have been better because it would have at least made him walk around it. And
we had that with Mike White.
Exactly.
With this past week where Ed Oliver just landed right through, and it was actually our rookie let him through AVT who kind of missed the block, but he's been good generally, so we're not worried about that. But I mean, we're talking about draft picks. I mean, you have drafted some talent on the O-line. It's not like you haven't put some resources in there. There's been Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg and lots of other. There has been talent, and there's been resources put there. Is it just? Do you feel generally about the draft process in terms of their drafting, not just at that position, but overall? Has it been a reason why? Because you did have quite a few picks to choose from the trades you made. Do you think that it's not really being fully realised or fully used properly?
I don't think it's necessarily been used in the best way. It's great when you stack up kind of 22 picks in 2 years, and everyone's like, "Oh, this team's got all the picks you could need to rebuild." You still have to make the right picks,
and that's where we are right now, right? We're in between those 2 years, so that's why I'm asking a question, because you have to nail. That's two parts process. You get the picks, but you got to nail the picks to replace the players you gave away, right?
That's it, and it's not as simple as the picks mean you will pick the right players. And people say, "Oh, well, if you can hit on half of them, it'll be great." You still got to hit on half of them, like this, you know. And I think probably what's compounded the problem with the O-line in particular is the O-line might be the worst coached unit in the NFL. I mean, we've had players that we've cut because they looked awful in Miami that are starting on lines all over the league and playing really good football. And then, like you say, Austin Jackson is a bit of a laughing stock in Miami right now because he's been moved from left tackle to left guard, still isn't playing well. But last year showed flashes. Liam Eichenberg looked good to start the season. He filled in at a game at left tackle, then played a couple of games at right tackle and looked good, then got moved back to left tackle, and I don't think it's done him any favours. But I think the biggest problem there is coaching. I think the guys have got talent, and they've been better in the last few weeks. I think the fact that they settled the line down, like it might not be the best line, but I think the consistency is helping them somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, you come off that win last week, obviously against Baltimore, was really impressive win, and I guess that shows that those players that's a step in the right direction in terms of what you're expecting for this season, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's with the O-line they did enough, and I'd say there's been a bunch of games this year they've done enough, and we've managed to shoot ourselves in the foot some other way. You know, especially the game that springs to mind is kind of like the Falcons game. That should have been a win easily, but there's also been some other good performances. The London game's a bit of an anomaly as well because I predicted a big win that week. I thought it was a perfect game for us to sort of get things back on track, but then you lose your two starting corners like an hour before the game. That's a big problem, man. You know, I mean, I was at practice 2 days beforehand, and Xavier and Howard didn't practice at all, so I wasn't surprised he didn't play. But Byron Jones was out there doing everything, and all of a sudden he's a scratch on the day, and I'm like, this isn't good, because I know, like I said earlier, the depth of this team is kind of a worry, and I think once you get past those, let's say the top 4 players able to play corner, it gets real weak real quick.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that comes down to the drafting overall, isn't it? And the talent acquisition. Like, that's where over time you need to hit on not just the first round picks, but those guys in the later rounds who can fill out your roster and be good contributors when the injuries happen to your starters. So, I see when I look at the roster, I do see a lot of talent there, but I see what you're saying. The depth there from an outsider's point of view also looks the same. So it looks, what I'm looking at is lining up with what you're saying. So that it's kind of one of those things where, I think everything clicks. You can beat a team like Baltimore, but on other days, it could be a bit of a trouble.
So Thursday night was super interesting because that's exactly the way this defense has played most of last year, and that's what led you to 10 wins. It wasn't on quarterback play, it wasn't on the offense at all. No. They did enough, and they did enough on Thursday. I thought Tua was good when he came in. We'll talk about Tua in a minute, but this defense, we've been screaming for it all year to play the pressure the same way they did last year. Send pressure. Last year they sent pressure as much as any team in the NFL, but it worked. And this year they kind of outthought themselves and decided we're not going to do that in case people work it out. But it's just led to you getting beat. So I've been an advocate the last few weeks of, look, you've got to do it. And if you get beat doing that, then at least you've tried something different and got beat. Yeah. What we've actually seen is in the last 3 weeks, Josh Allen get booed off at home 2 weeks ago. And in a game where it finished 26-11, the last touchdown came when Tua was trying to make up a 2-score deficit through a pick on 4th down with like 2 minutes to go. Yeah. It was really 19-11. The defense kept us in that game the entire time. It was really quite a good performance. Following week against, it's the Texans, and the Texans are obviously a bad team, but Tyrod Taylor has historically absolutely killed us. Doesn't matter who he's played for, he's just torn us apart. And they shut that team down, the way they should do. But I thought that was the game that they managed to sort of break the cycle of shooting themselves in the foot. We still committed 5 turnovers, but managed to win the game. And I've been saying for a while, that's the sort of game we needed, where you just managed to find a way to get over the line.
Yeah.
And then you see them come out on a short week, and really, I mean, they were the better team against the Ravens. In commentary, they tried to make some excuses about the heat and the humidity, and that's fine. But they also started the broadcast by saying it was a homecoming for most of the Ravens because they're from Florida. So, on the night we were the better team. The Ravens are the better team overall, but on the night, the Dolphins, thoroughly deserved to win the game. There wasn't any luck in that.
No, it was a really good performance. Obviously, Tua came into that game after, he was on the bench to begin. How have you found Tua's? It's been a very kind of stop and start to his career in terms of last year with Fitz coming in and out with him and flip-flopping between the two of them, with him having injuries. Obviously, he was banged up coming into the NFL. How are you feeling about Tua at this point, halfway through his second year?
So, I've got a feeling that if you had 10 Dolphins fans on here, you'd probably get 5 people say he's good and 5 people say he's bad. So,
right, okay.
So, I'm going to stick with what I've said all along. I'm a big fan of Tua. I like what he's done. I don't blame the rib injury on him. As you guys saw last week, if you leave Ed Oliver unblocked, bad things happen to quarterbacks. It's not, that's not much of a surprise. But when Tua's in the game, things happen faster. Tua makes quicker decisions, and Tua moves the ball faster than Jacoby Brissett, and that's the sort of. You saw it, if anyone gets a chance to go back and have a look, there was a play in the second half where it's a big play to Albert Wilson. I believe it's 64 yards to Albert Wilson on a wheel route. And yeah, it's a blown coverage, and any like me or you could throw that ball. But if you watch the replay afterwards, it shows you from behind, and Tua gets hit as he throws that ball, but the point is he gets it out really quickly. When you watch Jacoby Brissett, he would never have got that ball out, even though Albert Wilson is wide open, because he doesn't process nearly as fast as Tua does.
Right, yeah.
So, it's difficult because I'm sure you guys would have seen, and any of your listeners would have seen people saying, oh, well, if Tua was healthy enough to be the backup, he's healthy enough to start. I think the problem has been in the last 2 weeks. He had a fractured finger. It was very swollen. If you see the pictures of it, you could understand that it was going to cause a problem throwing the ball. I think they were trying to stop him making the injury worse. This is an injury that if he could make it worse, and you could lose him for more time. So if you had to sit him for 2 games like they tried to, but you got him back this week after, what would have been a 14-day break, that's better than having put him in the first game against the Texans and losing him for 6 weeks because he breaks the finger and has to have surgery. So I think that's more what happened, rather than saying the way it's been kind of portrayed in the media is that 100% Jacoby Brissett is better than a 75% Tua. I already think that's the case. I don't think that was ever the question. It's what is the chance of you making this injury worse? Because with the start we've had to the season, your only goal right now is to evaluate Tua. There's nothing. There's nothing else. If it leads to winning games and whatever happens, that's fine. But at the end of the season, you need to know if Tua is the guy.
Yeah. Otherwise, it starts to become a very bad situation when you can't battle, and we know that with Donald, where it gets messy. Like if you don't get a good trajectory going, it's hard to know what you've got, and even so much that the Panthers didn't know what they were trading for, and they gave us a second and a fourth and a 6th last year for him, and that's like highway robbery at this point, So it's like. Yeah, you got to get that eval on Tua as soon as possible to kind of know whether he's the guy or whether he's not, because there's no point in having a guy who's kind of like so. When you're really going for it, you need to know that the guy can really win and take you to the Super Bowl. And if he can't, you move on,
You've got to
because
move on.
there's no point having mediocrity.
That's
It's
right.
just waste of time. You're wasting everyone else's time. You're wasting all the other young players that you've got on the roster, right? So
that's it. You've got to just work out. If you haven't got a quarterback, we know in this league that you haven't got anything.
It's limited, yeah.
But if you want to feel better about Sam Darnold, we paid $9 million and only got a 4th round pick to trade Ryan Tannehill, who's leading the AFC right now. So, that's because we didn't do enough to figure out if he was truly ever the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of this game, going into this game now, I know Tua is going to be starting. Our dude Zach's not going to be. The news came out obviously today that Flacco's starting it, so that's an interesting one. But we will be able to see Tua. In terms of other players who we may not know, who are kind of less heralded, but who could make a difference on Sunday. Who are some of the names to look out for Jets fans?
I mean, really, you want to kind of look in the secondary of this team. That's where this team kind of lives. It's what Brian Flores does. He loves to play games with the defensive backs.
It's like Belichick, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, that's where he learned to coach.
Yeah.
And you can see it all over the way he acts, the way he is in press conferences, the way he treats players, the way everything about him is got Bill Belichick all over it. So if you don't like that, you're not going to like a Brian Flores coach team. But if you do, you'll like it. So, but yeah, he loves to play games with those defensive backs. There's a reason we have probably, I would imagine, I don't want to say anything that's factually incorrect, but it was the highest paid cornerback tandem in the NFL. I can't imagine anyone else has broken that this year. Just to let you know, I would usually know that. I have a 1-year-old, and the last year has been.
No, that's understandable. Don't worry about that. I mean, but all you need to know is that there are two highly paid individuals in Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, who are both really good cornerbacks. So it doesn't matter if someone's overtaken them, but it's still the point is made. You put a lot of resources into that unit, haven't you? Yeah,
and I want to say this because he's unheralded, but it's not anyone that no one is going to know. People need to give more respect to Byron Jones. Xavier Howard gets picks because people still throw the ball his way. And Byron Jones doesn't get targeted a lot. And when he does, it's usually breakups and not many yards. If you go back and look at his stats against the best wide receivers in the NFL, they are minimal. They're often that guy's worst game. He's crazy good. Just doesn't have the picks that most people want when you're paying a cornerback that amount of money. But when you pair him with someone who does have a nose for the football like Xavier Howard, I think it's the perfect tandem. But you'll often see in commentators that have looked at box scores and looked at highlights and stuff like that, and they say, oh, if a ball goes Byron Jones' way, well, you've got to do that because you don't want to throw at Xavier Howard. It's actually often the other way around. It's why Xavier Howard gets picks. Picked off Patrick Mahomes last year twice because he decided not to go at Byron Jones and to attack Xavier Howard. And what happens is Xavier Howard will give you some yards. He will also give away a couple of penalties. It's kind of his play.
Yeah.
But when it comes to clamping down in the red zone, he's got no sort of football, and he finds a way to get it out and turn the ball over. So it's really a picky poison.
Yeah, and you got the rookie safety. Is it Holland?
Javon Holland. Yeah, I mean, he's coming on week after week. He
looked really good on Thursday.
Yeah, and Brandon Jones, who was drafted last year, bit of a slower burn, but he's also coming along. And you can just see again, it's exactly what Brian Flores wants. He wants safeties that he can send on pressure. He wants safeties that can move around the field to kind of interchange with the corners. Maybe the guy that's kind of going under the radar, I suppose, right now is Jaden Phillips, who started the year really slowly. I was concerned, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of the pick because of the injury history.
Yeah.
The first few weeks, I mean, he was non-existent, absolutely non-existent. But he's got better and better every single week. You see him chasing down Lamar Jackson on Thursday night. Caused Tyrod Taylor a lot of problems. Also got after Josh Allen really well the week before. So, the sack numbers aren't there, but he's impacting a lot of plays. So I think he's a player for the future that I'm now starting to get excited about. You can see why they thought he was a first round pick, but I think with a lot of Brian Flores' defense, and it seems like the players take a while to take to it. We've seen in the last couple of years. It's not. You can say plug and play. It's I think it's a bit more complicated a system than that. And then the other thing to probably note the last 3 weeks, Brian Flores has denied it, but Brian Flores is calling the defense now. He was calling it last year, and when things changed 3 weeks ago, Brian Flores suddenly had a play sheet and was covering his mouth every time the defense were on the field.
Right. Okay.
When asked about it, he denied it. When asked about it the following week, when it happened again, he said no, but they asked the assistant, they said, it's a collaborative effort. We all do bits of it. It's like, yeah, Brian Flores is calling, and I'm fine with it. I've got no problem with it.
This is like what Gase was like last year with Darryl Loggins, where they couldn't decide who was calling the plays, and it was just it's just silliness, isn't it? I mean, you get this. Bill Belichick and his crew do similar stuff, where they just get kind of wrapped in these like trying to fight off these narratives,
games.
Right? Yeah, mind games and stuff. Yeah,
we know. We weren't asking you if you were doing it. We're saying we know you're doing it. We're kind of politely telling you we know you're doing it. I think the difference is, when he calls the plays, it's successful. And our problem when Adam Gase was here, and you guys obviously suffered the Gase effect afterwards, was Adam Gase would just bury his head in the sand, even though the offense is playing terrible. And when the defense is on the field, he's sitting on the sideline on his own, scribbling down plays. It's not working. What you're doing.
He didn't learn, and this is what we thought. Like, he went straight from one job to the other. I'm fine. I've gone from one NFL team to the other. I don't need to learn a damn thing.
That's right.
And he didn't. He did the exact same thing. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like,
it's a hard watch.
Oh, I mean, it's just bringing back nightmares. I'd rather not go back. I'm sure you don't. Let's leave that. We're both past it. We're both past it, mate. Let's just leave that guy alone now. It's the past for both of us, thankfully. So yeah, offensively, if we think, like an unheralded player who may be someone who, I know some of the kind of players, because we talk about fantasy and stuff, they're more well known. But is there a player that's kind of doing some things that are being maybe under the radar a little bit?
Probably not right now, to be honest. I'd love to say there was, but we're so far down the depth chart right now that it's, Devontae Parker and Will Fuller should be the best two receivers on this team, and
they're known. They're known, and they're known quantities to everyone, aren't they?
And they're both sitting on IR. Jalen Waddle has been great this year. He's literally as advertised. There's not been as many deep shots, but that is partly because deep shots aren't being called, and I don't think we could protect long enough to complete a lot of those.
Well, if you want the screen game, do the screen game with him, and we'll be fine actually against the Jets, because they are atrocious at snuffing out the screen or anything like that. So yeah,
the good news is we're terrible at running the screen, so it should be great.
Yeah, it's like a movable. It's one of those like movable force and an unstoppable object, isn't it? It's just like in terms of a game prediction for the game, so something that might happen in the game stat wise, what do you think might happen? You want to throw one out there, a player who might do something during the game?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to be much of a shock, and maybe we can come up with something a little bit more spicy in just a second, but I expect Xavier Howard to have an interception in this game. It's what he does.
Yeah.
I was actually all ready to come on and predict that he would have two. He has quite a number of multiple interception games in his career, and I thought if Zach Wilson or Mike White started, then I fully expected it. I think Joe Flacco is a better decision maker. From the outside, I watched your game the other day against the Bills because we weren't playing on Sunday, obviously. A friend of mine is an avid Jets fan as well, and I was talking to him and I said, actually, I think if I was you guys right now, I wouldn't want Zach Wilson to play against this defense, because it has the potential to be a real problem. And if it's a long-term development, watch it this week on the sideline and play it in 3 weeks' time when you've had a chance to really break it down. I think it's probably better for the development than, Brian Flores has managed to make Jared Goff look inept 3 times. He managed to do the same thing with Justin Herbert last year. Lamar Jackson didn't know what to do on Thursday night. Good established quarterbacks have had real problems with this team, with this defense when it's playing well, and the last 3 weeks it's started to do that. I'm hoping that we're going to see a continue of that the rest of the season.
Yeah. So I think Xavier Howard interception. I mean, that's a pretty locked in thing. So I think you're right. It was probably 1 or 2 depending on who's starting. I think Flacco will probably protect the ball a bit better than the other two. You never know,
Yeah.
but that's statistically you're probably right about that one.
I think that's probably why he's a good choice to start, and that's not supposed to sound disrespectful to the other two guys at all.
No.
It's just that we're in the same position. Everything we do is about the long-term development of Tua.
Yeah.
And if you throw him in against, if you put them in a bad situation, it only does them harm long term. So
no, I think so. I mean, Zach, if Zach was healthy, he would have started. Because it's Mike White who people are a bit upset about because he's a young. They want to give him another go. He went up against the number 1 D in the NFL, struggled but did well against others. So they wanted to give him another go against a team that's not not that young, but you're not the Bills right now.
No,
in terms of the Bills
certainly
D,
not.
in terms of what they offer. So they wanted to give him another shot, and I was like, Flacco gives us the best chance to win the game. We've seen the limitations that Mike White has. Like now that there's tape out on him. It's going to stop, like I said, and this is what we would have already covered on our podcast as well. But yeah, that's just what it is. So I think that the choice for Flacco gives us the best shot to win. Talk about the win or the losses. What's your prediction for the score on Sunday?
So I actually think the Dolphins will find a way to kind of stay ahead in this game. I predicted yesterday on our show that it'd be 31-13. I think Tua looks like he's playing well enough. I think they've managed to find something by getting Albert Wilson to practice. Albert Wilson played well on Thursday night. He's been an absolute non-factor all season, but he's come off a serious hip injury. Sat out last year because of COVID. The year before had massive hip surgery, and I think they've been trying to not practice him, but what it's resulted in is terrible play. Whereas last week they asked him, look, can you try practicing him because we really want to see what happens when you do that? It was a different player Thursday night. It looked more like the old Albert Wilson. And with the extra few days rest, I mean, if this was a Sunday game going into Sunday, I'd be worried about how healthy he is. But I think with the extra few days, hopefully we get to see that. And then, he's had some real problems lately in regards to discipline, but Preston Williams can be a real problem because he's a really big body with a massive catch radius.
Yeah.
But it's getting his head screwed on straight. He went undrafted for a reason, and it's discipline reasons.
Right, yeah.
2 weeks ago, he got left behind for discipline reasons.
Right.
Don't think Brian Flores suffers that too much. Yeah, he was caught laughing on the field a number of weeks ago after dropping to be honest, he was wide open, dropping a ball that's thrown right in his chest. I think that kind of put him on the wrong thing, but
on the bad radar, yeah. On the
exactly.
doghouse a little bit.
Exactly, but this week he's apparently been quite looking like his old self in practice. So hopefully he's out to prove a bit of a point.
So that's where you're saying the 31 points could come from. I mean, the defense is playing really bad at the moment. We're still trying to figure out how the scheme and the players. We've hit so many injuries. We're losing Marcus May out as well, and it's just a really bad situation with this learning the scheme, a new scheme being implemented with a lack of players, young players, and injured vets. It's just like. So it's the worst combination possible. Exactly. So we are really historically bad at the moment in the last few weeks. So I don't bat an eyelid when the opponent's fan says 30 points plus. And
that's not me trying to be it's the Dolphins Jets. It's just I think this defense is playing well enough to keep you to a low score. Is the problem.
I mean, like I said, I'm not going to bat an eyelid. I think it'll be a bit closer, but I would not be surprised if it's even larger than the gap you said, like at this point. So
I would be happy with a 1 point win as long as we find a way to win.
Same here. If it's a
big score, it wouldn't surprise me if we lost. I mean, to be honest, at this stage, I wouldn't.
The NFL this year, right? The NFL, two teams who are relatively close, like not as big as say the Jets where they face the Bengals, for example. It's like we were like, oh well, we're going to lose this one. I was on all the podcasts, on their podcasts, and like look what happens. The NFL is wacky this year, so you never know. But I think looking at all the stats, all the things coming into it, it seems like a Fair, cool.
And it's definitely interesting that we play each other kind of like 4 weeks apart. We'll be coming off a bye next time. I don't know about
Right.
you guys.
Okay, we've had our bye weeks ago, so yeah, we won't be. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
You know, I think it's interesting when two teams play each other kind of close together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but no, thanks, Lee, for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
No. Is there any way people can find you, find your stuff? You know, there's people who like to follow the Jets the UK chapters of other teams around the league.
I mean, the podcast is Dol-Fan UK Podcast, and I'm 5 Yard Lee on Twitter. So, you know, anytime people want to talk football, it's great. There's nothing better than being able to come on and just talk football.
No, I love it as well. It's great. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be heading it back to me and Matt now. Okay, so we'd like to thank Lee for jumping on the pod and giving us a lowdown on the Dolphins. Now for our preview, Matt, if we turn our attention to our defense and how we stop their offense, what are the kind of things that we can do to try and turn it around and show some improvement, some life that we haven't really been showing for many weeks at this point?
Well, I think it's going to start with the scheme. It's scheme this week for the Jets, and hopefully we're going to see some adjustments. And I don't mean any wholesale changes to the scheme. I think we've kind of got our plan, which is this kind of 4-3 master defense with kind of the nickel cornerback coming in quite a lot. But what the plan so far has kind of been is you send the four linemen, whoever it be, it's normally 2 inside, 1 in about 5 technique and 1 in about 9 technique. And obviously that varies depending on who's on the field. And their job pretty much is to kind of get 3 yards upfield, get into the backfield, get as disruptive as possible. They haven't really got any run blocking assignments, any quarterback coverage assignments there. Their jobs, in a nutshell, is to get upfield. And what that's doing is it's exposing the Jets linebackers quite a lot in terms of, well, in particular, Jared Davis, since he's been back in, he looks like he's just running backwards a lot of the time. And CJ Mosley is kind of left to cover 3 holes in one play, which is kind of keeping him exposed. So I think we need to be a little bit less excitable, animated in that front 4. Hopefully Salah can kind of, instead of just making their job as simplistic as getting upfield, which does work when you've got the players here. We saw it so effectively in San Francisco when you had Buckner, Bosa, Armstead, D Ford, and these guys could execute it. I think we are getting a little bit overmatched, especially without the help in behind on that second level. It's kind of coming back to bite us aggressively, repeatedly, and we've just seen it being taken advantage of so many times. One great example of it is just that first Buffalo touchdown last week when it was still 0-0, and all Josh Allen has to do is just buy himself enough time to hit the running back on the wheel route, and Jared Davis is just too slow getting over there. I think a little bit more discipline, keeping quarterbacks contained, keeping the kind of pocket active, and then in the run game, having people there to kind of set the edges and block it off would be really helpful. On the personnel side of things, on the D-line, sorry, I've spoken about this before. Missing Bryce Huff has been a big impact for this team because he was kind of in that wide 9 role and kind of setting the edges and getting after the quarterback from those angles. And I think having John Franklin Myers kind of cover that role in the last couple of weeks without any natural fit out there has kind of been to his detriment and also to the team's, because he's a slightly bigger guy. He's not quite as snappy, as explosive when he's allowed to. Just having that extra little bit of distance to make up to get to the quarterback is kind of taking a hit on him, and that's why I think some of his production just hasn't quite been there. He's still kind of the same player. He's just working from a further away starting point and doesn't quite have enough to make up that distance, make up that kind of gap. So a big player that the Jets are getting back this week, hopefully, is Kyle Phillips, defensive end, who was an undrafted free agent, I think, a bit like Bryce Huff. Mm-hmm. But he's looked good when he's played on the pitch. He's obviously not a superstar, but he has kind of the skill set that aligns to that wide 9 position, and hopefully will be a nice get back for us to have there. I think he'll bring a bit more squeeze, a bit more explosiveness on the pop, and he can really be an asset in terms of setting that edge, closing it off, forcing runners, quarterbacks to stay inside and be aggressive off that side. So I think that should allow them to hopefully shift John Franklin Myers back inside, and you kind of get back to the formations we were seeing in games against Tennessee is the one that comes to mind, but even a couple against Denver where John Franklin Myers was being able to be moved around the line and be as effective as possible. And then I guess the final question is just, as it has been for most of the season on the defensive side of the ball, how will the corners and the safeties in the secondary hold up? And they're still doing okay. I think it'll be interesting to see who's replacing Eccles on the outside. Is it going to be Pinnock? Is it going to be Javelin Guidry? Because they aren't.
It could be done, I guess.
It could be done, yeah. They aren't the biggest guys. They aren't I mean, Javelin Guidry, for some reason, he's about 5'8". He's kind of like a prototypical corner, but he is so fast. I think he actually got recruited to the university to play, or he could have ran track. He was so fast. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at corners and safeties. I think, as it has been for most of the season, that is kind of a worry. So what can we do to kind of give them some easier looks, some double coverages, and just kind of make their lives as easy as possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be how they can. Yeah, I don't even know what to do with this defense. And I think what you've said is right. I think they're going to have a bit more discipline with, stopping the run and having success and trying to, put it on Tua's shoulders a little bit more, and at least, get them into situations where they're going to have to, put them in situations that are unfavourable, because right now it's very easy where teams are running on us nice and easy for first and second down, getting to third and short, and then easy completions from there if they even get to third down. So, yeah, it's like a bit more discipline on the run is going to be needed, because I think Tua, I think you can still get to Tua. He's still a younger guy, still a guy who's I think he's processing faster than Jacoby Brissett, as we talked about with Lee, but he still is picking up the game, still only in his second year. So I think if you get to him without without being too reckless, I think that's the key. And the linebacking core, I mean, Jared Davis really needs to figure out what he's doing, to be honest, because right now, Quincy Williams it looks like a better option from what we saw with him before Jared Davis came back. So we need to see better from him, because
Jared Davis has probably been one of the biggest disappointments of the season.
Yeah, because of him being the priority.
We didn't even have that high expectations for him.
No,
but we thought if he can just be a solid linebacker to support CJ Mosley, just kind of hold his man, block his hole, he could be a success, and kind of you let CJ Mosley fly around the field like we'd seen for the first 6 weeks. And I think Jared Davis looks like he's probably getting worse each week.
I mean, you saw on that first play, like the one you talked about, the wheel route to Breida on that first down. I mean, he was there. He was shoving he was supposed to stick with Breida. That was his guy, and instead of doing that, he actually ran off and shoved. I think it was Diggs to the ground, and then let Breida run around the outside. Yeah. You're like, what are you doing? And he realised what was happening, and it was too late by then.
It's a nonsense play.
It was just like, I don't understand what the concept was to do with that. So, he needs to really work out. And the safeties, we're just on demand at this point. Like I said, it is what we talked about with David on Monday, or on the recap from last week, where this defense runs not really much on smoke and mirrors, but on kind of playing a simple game but fast and at high quality, and through a lack, through youth and lack of youth and lack of quality, and then also injuries hitting us at quite a lot of spots. It's kind of created a situation where we just don't have the players to fill the roles, so they're going to have to get creative a little bit. And I think it goes back to what Salah was doing last year with San Fran when he lost a lot of people. He did have to get a bit more creative and deviate from his normal scheme. And I know Jeff Holbrook is calling it, and I think Salah needs to work with him. The defensive team have to work together. The coaching staff have to work on a different plan to kind of help just disguise this a little bit, to kind of help things out a little bit more, and without making it too confusing and too different from what we're normally running. And they're going to have to do something to mix it up, because right now it's just it's too easy on on the offenses
it's
that we're
such an
facing.
important separation that we kind of have to make. It's if you lose because you simply just don't have the players, because the Jets backfield, the Jets secondary is beaten up, and corners are gone down, safeties are going down. I mean, everyone's kind of forgotten about Lamarcus Joyner. He was going to be the safety next to Marcus May, and he kind of hasn't played all season. So it has been tough, and it's taken its toll. And if you lose because the other team simply have better players, then it kind of is what it is at that point. You can kind of address that. If it's kind of what we've been seeing, where schematically or poor execution or blown assignments, that's when it's frustrating. And I think that's what people have found so frustrating with the Jets defense over the last couple of weeks, because no one's asking them to come out and be an all-time defense. And I think people had realistic expectations as to what they were going to be. It's just at some point you need to look at Salah and Olbrich and say, you've got to, we're not asking you to split an atom here, but the lack of flexibility, the rigidity in sticking with this same scheme of getting your front four upfield, your linebackers spread wide, and your secondary drop into zone, which they've been playing all year, isn't working. And you need to try and mix things up, and you need to try and get out of this vanilla system, throw a bit of raspberry in there, throw a bit of mint chocolate chip in there, just kind of mix up the flavours, get some salted almonds, get a little bit of whipped cream on the top, some nice little sprinkles. We've got to try something. Yeah. And Tua and this Dolphins offensive line, if you're not going to try it in this game, and you're not going to try it in the Houston game next week, what is the point? You've got 2 weeks now when you can try and reset and kind of change gear, have a gear shift with the defense and get something going. You can't just come out and let them pick you apart with these 8, 9, 10-yard passes and keep going on it all game. Like, you don't even have enough self-respect to try and change things at half time, and you just get marched up and down the field in the third quarter, the fourth quarter. By that time, no Jets fans left watching the game because they're just done with seeing their team get scored, and you've got to kind of bring something different today.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And if you talk about blown assignments, there shouldn't be in the D that they've got. There should be a lack of blown assignments. That's the whole point why they keep it so simple, is so the players don't blow assignments and they can play at a high level without having to worry about any kind of complex schemes or more complex schemes. Is something that someone like Rex Ryan or Todd Bowles would throw it for his defensive players. I think. Yeah, mix it up for sure. I mean, and against these teams, like you said, against Miami, against Houston, this is the time when you can take a chance to mix it up, have a few mistakes where there may be a blown coverage here or there, but overall you may not get punished, and even if you do, they're not going to be such a juggernaut offensively that you won't be able to cover. Hopefully you'll be able to get such good returns in what you're doing when it works that it makes up for any potential mistakes that might come up through learning something new and there maybe being a blown assignment.
It's just coward coaching once again. We've seen it in some of the fourth down calls and some of the flags and some of just the attitude, and I think that's pissing people off as well. Is the Jets are kind of turning up to places expecting to lose, playing to lose, and we all kind of in the off season, and I was so guilty of this. We kind of clowned people like Dan Campbell, and we were like, yeah, we've got Robert Saleh, and they've got Dan Campbell who's talking about biting people's kneecaps. But I tell you what, the Detroit Lions are 10 times better to watch than we are at the moment. And Dan Campbell's got them playing with aggression and properly and motivated. And Robert Saleh just looks like he's got going in the wrong direction. So, kind of ranting now, but this is the opportunity to kind of be aggressive, try something different, play to win the game, go after it. It's going to be an opportunity against a team who's turning things around, and they do have a decent offense, the Dolphins, but this is just a chance. And if we kind of come out, and we sit here on Monday when we record our recap podcast and we're saying the same thing, it's going to be so frustrating.
Yeah, and you wouldn't say that there was a good chance that might be the case, because how long it took for on the offensive side for them to switch over from the dominance of 12 personnel and how much we relied on it going into the season. That's obviously waned it a little bit. They've moved into more personnel formations and it's worked. So hopefully now, in a similar situation, a rookie defensive coordinator this time is going to have to look at this and realize things need to change. and the head coach needs to work with him, just like they did offensively, and hopefully they figure it out. So I'm still not on the staff. I know a lot of people getting upset with this decision making that Salah's doing. Like everyone's, Matt Campbell. Is it Matt Campbell? No,
Matt Kavanagh.
Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's
Campbell.
always been this kind of bit of a nutter, right? He's always been that kind of guy. Fair enough. Salah, he obviously came. You always saw on the sideline from our point of view, seeing another team. You always saw him get hyped up. Those are the videos that get shared. But when you get to know him, you realise that's not how he is all the time. But he gets excited for game day. But I think he's still figuring out as a head coach, what's the best way to deal with this? When do we abandon our schemes? When do we change? So there has to be a little bit of leeway given. But that being said, they also need to realize that this year they're going to be fine. Like they should be safe. Like they're not going to do anything that is going to cost them their jobs. And actually, maybe even coaching scared would actually put them in a more precarious situation for that actually happening. Even though I don't think it will happen. Then they're actually going for it and maybe, actually winning a game that you maybe wouldn't win because you went for a bit more. So, yeah, I think they need to just have a bit more, throw a bit more caution to the wind and try a few different things because what we're doing right now isn't working. So try something else. If it doesn't work, then it's not worse than what's happening because we've got, historically bad numbers in defensive, scores, against us. And it's kind of, you got to try something different. It's simple as that. So, I think we'll move on to the offense now. I saw that the offense is ranked 11th in pass. This is crazy. The 11th ranked offense in the NFL, which is in terms of the passing game. What do you think?
Taken that at the start of the season, wouldn't we? Having the 11th ranked passing attack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'd like the run game to be better. And I think it will get better especially once Mackay comes back. He's got that. He's so dominant in the run game. I think he's such a big difference. Like, I think him and Fant, if Mackay plays well, let's say if he comes back, because he wasn't playing well before he went down, even though it was very short time. But if Mackay plays well, he's obviously probably equal to what Fant can do from a pass protection. But what he can do on on the run game is like just light years ahead of what Fant can do. And so I think hopefully that improves with that. But with the offense overall, going to this Miami game where this defense is very blitz happy, kind of leave their guys to kind of manage on the back end. And they've struggled until the last few weeks, especially last week. They did really well in containing Lamar and that offense. What do you think we need to do to try and exploit what they try to do?
Yeah, well, it was funny actually. This was back when I was up in Liverpool, just off the train, bags dropped off, out to a bar, and they had the Dolphins Ravens game on the screens behind the bar, and I kind of half an eye on it, and every time that I looked at this Dolphins defense, they kind of played this really aggressive cover zero man look. So all of their linebackers squeezed right up to the line of scrimmage. So Lamar didn't quite know who was coming after him. And what you do then is you drop your safeties and corners about 7-8 yards off the line of scrimmage and kind of just play a loose man against them. And just don't get beat deep is the idea. But what they were able to do is just get so much pressure so quickly that anything was being able to shut down because the Baltimore line and Lamar just weren't able to identify where the pressure was, which is probably the reason, having watched that, you're seeing someone like Joe Flacco start over Mike White because he's got the experience and he's seen these looks, he's been around the block, he's kind of identified and sorted them out. And with the way the Jets' interior offensive line has been performing, AVT, Greg Van Roten, Connor McGovern, the latter two, once we get Connor McGovern and Greg Van Roten out of New York, the sooner the better. They can just be shot to the moon at the end of the season as far as I'm concerned. But so Joe Flacco coming in should be able to identify and kind of help pick these things up and then be able to execute against that. One thing Joe Flacco did really well last season was he gave the receivers a chance to make plays, chance to win the ball, chance to fight for it, and he will be a lot more aggressive in terms of taking shots down the field, I think, than Mike White ever would have been. I mean, when Mike White threw the ball down the field, it was a pretty much unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
So with the Dolphins lining up in man coverages, we should be able to get some some looks for people like Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Keelan Cole. And if they can make the plays, there are plays there to be had, I think. It's just about making sure you've got enough time, identifying the situation, identifying the blitz, the man, the free zone, the soft zone, and then making the right play and the right read off of that. Which is why I think Joe Flacco's starting.
Yeah.
I think the O-line, we kind of have banged on about this all week, and it's so important. But can those guys pick up the blitzes and buy that extra half a second in the pocket? Can they prevent people like Jaden Phillips, Christian Wilkins getting a free run at the quarterback? Because as soon as that's going down, the offense is going to kind of stutter and stop. And I think the last thing, and we can kind of dive into these two, but I think we all just want to see more of Elijah Moore and Michael Carter.
Yeah.
I think it's 9 touchdowns between them.
The last, I think it's 8 touchdowns in the last 9 games between.
8 touchdowns in the last 9 games between them. They're exciting players to watch, and they're kind of finding their feet in the NFL now, and it's a positive sign, and I think we'd all like that to continue. Just keep watching them, get the ball in their hands.
Yeah.
Be creative with your usage of them, kind of mix things up, and let's just see what they can do.
Yeah, I'm actually, like I said, the needle didn't move for me at all once the decision was made. Earlier in the week with the Flacco decision, because I was like, okay, well, it was the fact that Zach wasn't playing was the news for me, and then I thought, okay, well, whoever's there is whoever's there, because there my attention always then switches. If Zach's not playing, naturally my attention switches over to Elijah and to Michael Carter. So, especially obviously AVT. But he obviously is on the line, so he's in a different position. But in terms of those two playmakers, for sure. I mean, all our playmakers, I thought we're seeing the Keelan Cole's doing good stuff. I think Corey Davis, we know what he can do. So I feel that we've got the weapons to take on teams, and it's just about getting them the ball and get them in looks that they can get the ball and make something happen. So. But then also being able to take a deep shot once in a while where it's there, where the defense is pressing you down and clamping down on those easy throws. I think that's where Mike White came unstuck a little bit, and that's where Joe Flacco, I think, is pretty good at the deep ball as well. So, yeah, I'm actually I'm pretty excited for the game. When in that context, like I'm always excited to see the young players and we've got plenty of them to look forward to. It's not like I said, it's light years. We've got to realise it's light years from where we've been in terms of just trotting out old, has-beens who are just wasting up snaps of the young players. We really are seeing a lot of young players and a lot of young snaps. We're leading the league in the NFL in rookie snaps. So there's just a lot there to look at, to kind of on both sides of the ball, to really enjoy as a potential for what we could look for in the next couple of years. I think the rookie class is looking really good, and if Zach comes back and is the guy that we want, it's a smash hit class. It really is. So I think it's I think we just don't worry about the Flacco situation, guys. If you're annoyed about that, I understand it. Like, it's frustrating because I understand it's just the overall situation is frustrating, and I think you just focus on the positives and the people that we actually enjoy watching on Sunday. And I think you'll get something out of it. And I think we will be able to put some points up against the Dolphins, with Flacco picking up those blitz. So hopefully the line can do just a semblance, like I said, just that half second, just a semblance of some blocking once in a while. Not like last week, leaving Ed Oliver to run right through the middle. Hopefully that kind of stuff doesn't happen again. We'll see. We'll see what happens on Sunday. But I think we'll wrap it up for our preview here. Matt, is there anything you want to say to the listeners before we head off?
Just enjoy the game. Take it for what it is. Enjoy the positives. Hopefully we'll get a closer game, and I predict that we do get a closer game than we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So just enjoy it, have fun. If it goes all horribly wrong, Red Zone's only a channel away.
Yeah, that's for an option for some. I guess it's as content producers here, I always have to just sit through every single snap and see where it goes. So, hopefully it doesn't get to that point for anybody. But hopefully it's a close game, and where the defense shows some improvements, and we got something to.
And Seattle have got the Cardinals, so hopefully Seattle lose again.
Oh, that'd be delightful. Yeah, that was exactly. We can always have a bit of Schadenfreude to help our Sunday go past. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening. If you want to follow us on any of our our social medias, we're at on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook at Jets UK Pod. Obviously, you've got David's work with the Jetway, his writing work that he does every weekday. So subscribe to that. You follow that. It's great stuff that he puts out. He's just taken a step away to deal with a personal issue. So maybe miss a few shows. We'll see when he's back. But he'll be keeping an eye on everything that's happening with the Jets from where he is. And enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game as much as we can. Hopefully it's something to cheer about. And we'll catch you on the next one.